So in The Chosen season 4, one of the biggest things that happened, obviously, was, spoiler alert, the death of Rama, right? All of us have seen this at this point, and we've been kind of digesting it for the better part of a year. And so here, I wanted to talk about some hypothetical situations because a lot of things were so... The Chosen was attacked so much for this decision. Dallas was attacked so much for this decision of Rama dying here and Jesus specifically not healing her as Thomas asks him to. I think that this is biblically fine. I don't think that Jesus healed or resurrected every single person that was hurt near him or around him, and he had his reasons for doing so. It is not always God's will to heal. Otherwise, he would heal every single time we asked, right? I've had headaches, or I've had, dislocated a knee, or different things like that, right? Where I've asked for healing for these things. I've asked for healing for specific moments in my life, or for specific people in my life, right? And God does not answer those prayers because it is not always best that we are healed, right? It is not always God's will for us to be healed on this earth at this time, right? And so I believe that biblically it is fine. I have no problem with Rama dying. However, I did think that it would be an interesting exercise for us to hypothetically think about how the storyline could go if Rama did not die. What is a different potential storyline, and what would the chosen world look like? How would we still get things like doubting Thomas or Gaius still being in charge? How could we keep things relatively the same, but keep Rama alive instead of killing her in that moment? Kind of changing the question for episode 3 of season 4. So let's talk about this real quick. Of course, in season 4, we have this large storyline in the first few episodes of Thomas and Rama's love. This has been going on since season 1, episode 5, when we first met them. We knew that they were flirtatious and they liked each other and they were kind of figuring things out, right? Moving on into season 2, we see a little bit more of this, even so much to see that Thomas approaches Kaphne, and Kaphne knows that Thomas wants to ask for Rama's hand in marriage. Then in season 3, it becomes even more flirtatious, so much so that Thomas and Rama want to ask Kaphne for permission for them to get married. Doesn't work out in season 3, and in season 4, it gets even worse, right? Kaphne is very much against Jesus, he's very much against Thomas, and there's a lot of things going on there. Now, we had a lot of theories going into season 4 of what would happen. One of our theories turned out to be true with Rama dying, but what would happen if we changed a little bit of season 4 and had it so that Rama did not die? I think this could open up a lot of different possibilities. Not that I'm saying that it would be better than what we got from The Chosen season 4, but I do find it interesting to at least look at this and to talk about how it could have been, or a different perspective that we could have come from. So let's start from the beginning of season 4 and talk about what I would change just slightly as we move into season 4. Now, we're assuming that everything in season 4 is basically exactly the same, except for the things that I'm mentioning here. Now, let's first start with Thomas and Rama overall. There's a few small things that I would add in the first few episodes, getting into episode 3, that would help us to get to the point that I want to get to. First off, we would see that Thomas and Rama are still deeply in love. They still want to get together, and when Rama returns right at the beginning of season 4, we would see the same thing, that they would have this moment on the dock with Barnaby and Shula. They would talk about getting married, even though Kaphne doesn't approve. They would continue to try to get married and to do this. Then we would see that Rama specifically talks about her time in Tel Dor. This is the one thing that I would change near the beginning of the season. She would look at Thomas and she would say something to the effect of, well, I couldn't convince my father. He still is not on board with this, but I do think I found a way around it. And she would add one additional detail that would help us a little bit later on in the season. And that is that she would say, even though I was there for months, I actually didn't see my father for the last 3 weeks that I was there. For some reason, he had been avoiding me. Maybe I made him mad. Maybe there's some different things that were happening. Keep that in mind. Then, as we continue on, the same things happen throughout episodes 1 and 2, where Thomas goes and he begins to prepare a mohar for Rama. And things, he gets the sundial, for example. They have the conversation with Jesus on the road in episode 2, where he says, I came not for peace, but with a sword, right? To divide households. And you must hate your father and mother, right? And follow me. And so understanding that, we see a couple of things in the first 3 episodes that begin to shift a little bit with Rama and the relationship between Thomas and her. We see that Thomas is very much focused on following Jesus. However, Rama things start to shift a little bit with her. She actually starts to think about Thomas and her's relationship more than she does following Jesus. This is something that I pointed out even during just my normal breakdowns of the show. You could definitely see that Rama and a little bit of Thomas definitely seemed way more interested in their relationship than they were about following Jesus completely. This is something that I think we would enhance in this hypothetical version of the show. We would see that Rama is way more involved with Thomas, and she is just so focused on marrying Thomas and being with him that is the main thing that she's thinking about above all else. She has fallen in love with Thomas, and in doing so, it has become a distraction for her from Jesus, if that makes sense. So from here, I would move on to episode 3 specifically. We would see as Thomas begins to get his mohar ready for Rama. He's going to give it to her and make sure that she knows that they are going to get married, right? We see that picnic scene with Andrew. Everything like that still happens. One thing that we would see as well is Quintus here, because remember, Quintus is a large part of what we see here as well. Quintus is a massive part of this episode, obviously. In the original episode, he actually kills Rama. In this episode, since he's not killing Rama, we're going to see what changes with him as well. We obviously see him in episode 3 as he begins to freak out. Again, he's going through the courtyard. He's yelling about the dogs, right? He's taking the wine from the vendors. He's still doing all of that. And so we're going to see the unhinged Quintus begin to get more and more and more unhinged here, okay? Now, as we continue, we have the same stuff happen in episode 4. We have Gaius, who stands up against Quintus and obviously has this moment of saying no to him during the teaching of Jesus. This is when Jesus is talking about the 7 woes to the Pharisees, and he is basically yelling at them in the middle of a square. It's causing a huge riot to happen with all of the tent city folks and the Pharisees and everything else happening there at the synagogue. Now we see as Quintus is yelling at him, Gaius says no. Quintus then arrests Gaius and puts him in jail. Obviously, that's exactly how it happens in the episode. Now, the one big thing that I would change here is as we go through the whole thing where Quintus is running at Jesus and running at the apostles and saying to arrest them, the apostles and Jesus, including Rama and Thomas, actually would get away at this point. So they would escape what was going on here in the whole section. They wouldn't get caught up in the whole crowd. There would be a little bit of that. Maybe it would be a little bit of tension there, but nothing so much to say that Rama would get stabbed here. Okay, this is one of the big points that a lot of people have said as well, is that Thomas was very dumb to just walk directly in front of Quintus, right? This seems like a very unintelligent thing to do. It doesn't feel like Thomas would do that because obviously there's a dangerous Roman with a sword. Why would you even walk there, right? So let's say that they don't do that at all and they actually walk around and they're able to get out safely. Okay, so Rama, Thomas, all the apostles, and Jesus are able to escape, and now Quintus is in front of the crowd with everybody kind of bearing in on him. They're making way for his sword as he's swinging it around, and he's scared, right? He doesn't know what to do. Remember, if we kind of preface this and show who Quintus is, right? We know that earlier on in the episode, he's yelling at Gaius because he's in the red. His money is no longer, piling up. He's not doing well for Rome, okay? And so now he's really panicking because what happens when you are insufficient for Rome? Well, you immediately get recalled, okay? If you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing in your position, Rome is going to punish you for that, and they're going to take away your power. Quintus thrives on his power. He wants to be the one in control. He wants to be the one with the power. He wants to be the one that is having the authority over everybody else, right? So Quintus here in this moment, when he's standing in front of the crowd, right at the end of episode 3, we see him as he's looking around for Jesus. He's screaming for Jesus. He's irate and he's yelling, right? We see that he's looking at the crowd and they're all kind of trying to back away from him, but there's too many people. They can't even back away. He's swinging his sword around and he's threatening everybody to get Jesus over here, right? At this moment, things begin to calm down because Jesus is gone and the only threat in front of them is this Roman soldier, okay? So then something happens. I don't know the exact detail that could happen here. Possibly this could be Barnaby being part of that crowd. Possibly Barnaby could actually say something snarky or like be like, calm down, Quintus, what are you doing? You know, like just messing with him a little bit. And this could set off Quintus again to try to attack whoever says that thing. Hey, if you're liking this video and you want to support what we do here on The Chosen Sleuth, it would really help us out if you would join our Patreon at snipesupport.com. Even just $5 a month really adds up if everybody joins in and helps us to make more and more videos just like this. This helps us with travel, for example, Chosen Con or different things like that. It helps us to do more and more with the cast of The Chosen or the Chosen crew, and it allows us to be able to continue to make videos like this without me wasting time on something else in order to pay our bills and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to see more videos, bigger videos, better videos from us here on The Chosen Sleuth, then check out snipesupport.com, and we could really use your help. Anyway, let's get back to the video. So maybe he tries to kill Barnaby, but then when he goes and he tries to do that, then Atticus actually stops him. So I could imagine this definitely happening where Quintus goes to kill someone, but then Atticus is able to stop it from happening before it does because he has a little bit more time to react now that things are kind of calmed down in this moment. Then he takes Quintus aside, and we see that everything happens on the Quintus side of things as we see it happen in The Chosen Season 4. He has obviously gone overboard, and Rome has 2 reasons now in order to basically take him out of his position. One reason is because he's just incompetent. He no longer has the funds coming in that he should be having coming in from all the people that are in his city. He's actually losing a ton of money because of the tent city people, right? Secondarily, now he is a liability because he is corrupt and he's attacking the people of the city, right? And so the same thing definitely could happen that we saw in episode 4 from The Chosen, as he is, taken out of his position, and then Gaius is put into his position basically by a recommendation from Atticus, okay? So all of that kind of breaks down. Now here is where I get to the other portion of it, because I'm sure a lot of you are questioning, well, okay, if Rama doesn't die, right, what happens with Thomas? Because the reason why Rama died is for a couple of different things, right? It's in order to get Quintus to the position that he was in and get Gaius in the position of Quintus. Then also it is to have Thomas begin the journey of doubting Thomas, right? One of the things that I've been pretty critical on for season 4 myself, not that I have a lot of criticisms of season 4, but one of the things that I've been critical about is the relationship that Thomas has now with the rest of the group and with Jesus after Rama's death. I don't think that it's representative of a biblical Thomas. I just don't think that that's the case. I think Thomas was very much faithful, and he had a lot of courage within the ministry of Jesus. And so we'll get to that in a second. But here is where I think this journey kind of begins for Thomas, and this is what I would change. Instead of Rama dying, I would have this happen instead. So as we escape this whole Quintus situation, right? They regroup somewhere, probably outside of Capernaum, to give it a little bit of time to breathe, right? They run out to a camp somewhere, or they meet somewhere, maybe in Tent City or wherever, right? Then we see as Rama and everybody is kind of breathing, they're like, man, I can't believe we got out of there. That was crazy. It's insane. And then a messenger approaches the group with a message specifically for Rama. Now, earlier I mentioned that Rama would have said earlier in the season, right, that she hadn't seen her father for several weeks beforehand. And this is because her father was sick, but he didn't tell her that. He was prideful. He didn't want her to see him weak, right? This is a very Coffney thing to do. And so he actually hid himself for the last few weeks that Rama was in Tel Dor and let her think basically, hey, I'm still mad at you. I'm not going to do anything. But really, he was covering up his sickness, okay? This messenger comes up and tells Rama and the rest of the group that her father has died, okay? Now, this presents a pretty big conundrum as to what would happen there, right? What does Rama do now, right? What does Thomas do now? What does the group do now? And so there's a couple different ways that the story could go from here, but for example, it could end up like this. In episode 4, we see a similar journey that we see in the current Chosen Season 4, where they actually travel from Capernaum to Tel Dor in order to support Rama, in order to support, her family and what they're doing there. They end up going towards Tel Dor, But the family of Cophny has heard about this Jesus, and they as well are very angry at him. They're angry at the fact that Rama was not there when her father died. They're angry at the fact that now they have to figure out how to do this business without him, right? There's a lot of different things that are happening here. Rama's mother, we meet her here, and she actually asks that Rama comes back and helps them to run this business since she knows so much about it and has been doing it for so long. Now, this is going to be a big moment for Rama. Does she trust Jesus enough to travel with Jesus, or would she go back with her family? And I think in this version of events, it would make a lot of sense to me that Rama goes back with her family. She travels back with them, and she is able to continue on the business and to basically fix all the things that are going to go wrong since her father is now no longer in the picture, right? At this moment, we get another moment between Thomas and Rama where he has to decide. Rama asks him, hey, will you stay with me, right? Will you stay with me in Tel Dor? Will you help me to run this business? Will you make this a possibility for me? And I think here is where Thomas goes in a different direction than what we see him go in The Chosen specifically right now. I think this is where Thomas has to make the decision to follow Jesus instead of Rama. Follow Jesus and pick him over Rama. I think this is a big thing that would shift the dynamic of episode 3 and episode 4 particularly, and shift the dynamic that Thomas has with the rest of the group. Because in The Chosen currently, the dynamic is Jesus did not do what Thomas wanted him to do, and because of that, he has doubt, right? Because of that, he's not sure what to believe anymore. Because of that, even though he thinks that Jesus is the Messiah, even though he loves Jesus, even though he trusts Jesus, there's some sort of doubt that is formed there, right? And the question that we all ask in episode 3 is, why did Jesus not heal Rama? But instead, the question kind of switches in a couple of different ways in this new narrative, right? The first question is, how do Rama and Thomas deal with the death of a non-believing family member or friend, right? Or close relative? This is a really big question that I think The Chosen hasn't quite tackled in any way. It would be a lot different, right, than what we've seen before. All the deaths that we've seen, for example, Joseph or Lazarus or Rama, all of these are deaths of, or John the Baptist, all of these are deaths of believers. So these deaths don't hit as hard. But for example, if Cophny had died, who was not a believer, this, I think, would change the question quite a bit into something a bit different as well. Now, the secondary question this would bring up as well is, Thomas, do you trust Jesus more than you do Rama? Or do you love Jesus more than you love Rama, right? And Rama's asking the same question, vice versa. I think it would have been so cool, in my opinion, to see Rama choose her family over Jesus and over Thomas. Not that this is something obviously that I would want to see from somebody in real life, but I think in a storytelling moment, to have someone walk away from Jesus, that we know this happened in scripture, right? We haven't really seen this in The Chosen very much at all. Seems like everybody that's following Jesus is continuing to follow him and continuing to believe in him, continuing to know that he is God, except for the Pharisees. And so it would have been really interesting to add in someone from the followers of Jesus that walks away from him. It would be really, really interesting to see that, because I think there's a part of Rama that never really got it anyway, at least from my perspective. I think she was really focused on other things most of the time. So it would have been really interesting for me to see. And I think this brings us to at least the beginning of the seed of Thomas's doubt, right? Let's say Thomas chooses to follow Jesus over going and helping Rama in Tel Dor with the business. Then he begins to follow Jesus again, and he has to leave Rama behind. He can no longer marry her. Obviously, she's hurt by the decision because she thought that he really loved her, all this kind of stuff, right? She kind of understands, but kind of doesn't. And so she's hurt by this whole decision. And they, at least for now, aren't getting married, and they don't have any, relationship there. This would be really, really interesting from my point of view, because this, I believe, would at least have a seed of Thomas's doubt kind of come in. He really truly believed that him and Rama were going to be together. He really truly believed that God was telling them, this is the time, this is what's going to happen, right? And because it doesn't, because all these bad things happen right after another, And we see that Rama is hurt by this, and doesn't have the same relationship that she had before with Thomas. Like, I could see this so clearly that Thomas begins to have doubt. Then in the end of season 4 and the beginning of season 5, we start to add more pieces of doubt coming in from Thomas. Different things are happening in his life that cause more and more doubt. He sees, for example, Judas's doubt, or he sees all these other things that kind of come in, and that doubt begins to build. So we can still have that doubting Thomas moment later on in season 7, right? But what I think this does is when Thomas chooses Jesus over Rama, it bolsters his faith. So that when we get to moments, for example, like with Lazarus later on, in scripture, Thomas clearly has a lot of courage. He's saying, let us go with Jesus so that if he dies, we will die with him, right? But in The Chosen, this comes off as almost like a suicidal thought. It comes off very strange in The Chosen because basically Thomas is saying, let's go to Lazarus so that we can die with him. And so it's a little bit off for me there in the way that it came off in The Chosen. And the emotional Thomas that we have, I think, hurts his character a bit. So I do wonder how that's going to play out in season 5 and in season 6. I hope they kind of mend that a little bit. But I have a feeling that his character is going to get a little bit stale because of that. Whereas if he had gone in the direction of having even more faith because he had to choose Jesus, then I think his character would have a different flavor to it. And it would change the way that he thought about things overall. He would become very serious in his mission, which then brings us to the place of doubt later on because he wants to be logical and serious and straightforward in how he is kind of operating in himself and operating in the ministry. And so when he knows that Jesus is dead, he wants proof that Jesus is alive so that they can move forward and do these things, right? That's where the doubt comes in. So anyway, that is my big, long what if scenario. What if Rama had never died? What if there was some other scenario that happened there? What if we changed the question from why didn't Jesus heal Rama to something else, right? None of this is biblical. None of this fits within scripture in a perfect sense, right? And so I think there's a lot of room for it to be moved here and just thought about in different ways. I've always wanted to do this, by the way. I've done a couple of what if scenarios in the past with Quintus and some different people there. Although we can only really do this with non-biblical characters, right? So for example, Rama or Quintus or people like that, right? And so this is a good opportunity for me to kind of do this and have a hypothetical situation, just kind of thinking through what would happen if Thomas and Rama's story was slightly different. What would happen if there was still heartbreak and there was still hardship, but it just turned out a little bit differently? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on the whole situation. So let me know in the comments below, as you guys always do. And I'd love to hear your stories. Do you have a what if scenario? Is there a what if scenario I should do in the future? I'd love to hear your thoughts.